The United States may take in as many as 10,000 Syrian refugees fleeing persecution in their war-torn homeland this year. But there are fears that letting the refugees in may let in some ISIS terrorists, as apparently happened in Europe. Still, relief agencies are preparing to resettle the refugees here. Jewish Family Services of Western Massachusetts has already helped a few Syrian families. Connecting Point correspondent Carolee McGrath spoke with Jewish Family Service President and CEO Maxine Stein to learn how the refugee program works and for her own perspective on the controversy.
Our organization has been resettling refugees since the 1970s. Our organization has been in existence for about 100 years, and Jewish Family Service got involved with the initial wave of immigration of Russian Jewish immigrants coming out of the USSR back in the 70s, and that work continued into the 80s. And when that work had been fairly completed, the organization made a commitment to continue with refugee resettlement work.
Okay. Have you resettled Syrian refugees in this area, and how many families?
We have. We resettle refugees from many, many countries. We resettle refugees from Afghanistan, from Iraq, from the Congo, from Somalia, from Burundi, from Nepal, from Bhutan, and also, in addition, from Syria. And in the past year or so, we have resettled 5 Syrian families, which have amounted to about 22 individuals.
What's involved in this process?
What's involved in resettling?
Yes.
Well, it's a very long process. Our organization, well, let me start at the top. The Homeland Security is responsible for the resettlement of refugees in this country, as probably most people are aware of. And Homeland Security works with 9 different parent organizations, which we call VOLAGs, which are voluntary groups that then in turn distribute the refugees to their organization. So we belong to, or we have one VOLAG, which is the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, which comes out of Washington, D.C. And that organization then distributes the refugees that they are given from Homeland Security to their different organizations. And so HIAS will let us know at the beginning of our fiscal year. We have a conversation about how many refugees we can take in our community, and then we get the refugees from our VOLAG, which is HIAS.
So there's been a lot of concern, of course, since the massacre in Paris and then again in California. Many politicians have said, don't let any Syrian refugees in. The U.S. has a plan of bringing in 10,000 over the next year. How do you feel about that as an organization, and how would you address those concerns?
I think that it's really important to acknowledge concerns of people. It's a very frightening time in the world, and I think for a lot of us, we struggle to find some peace or some place in our hearts or in our minds that feels safe for us. And we are challenged to do this right now, given the world situation. And that goes all the way down to our communities. So the fear is somewhat understandable, and at the same time there is a process that the government has taken, and there's a process that we as communities take to also, so the government takes a very serious stand on security issues, and there's a very, very rigorous security screening that takes place before people even arrive to this country. When refugees arrive to us, they have already been cleared of, and usually a 2+ year security clearance procedure that has taken place out of this country. And our job is to then begin to integrate these people to the community, which is currently Springfield, Massachusetts, which is where we resettle the majority of the refugees that come to us.
So politicians might say, of course, you look at what happened in France, 2 of those terrorists snuck in as refugees, so there's a real concern there. It happened in Finland, where they just made arrests recently, again, of ISIS terrorists sneaking in, posing as refugees. So can you see where that concern comes from for people? But at the same time, you want to bring the families in and make them feel comfortable in this community. It's not an easy spot for you to be in.
Well, I think it comes down to education and information. I think that there is a lack of information. And when we read in the news that terrorists snuck in from one European country to another, I think it's important for people to understand what the flow of the what the flow of people is and the borders in Europe, which are extremely different. There is no security clearance in the different borders, and people are allowed to travel in Europe from one country to another very easily without the security checks. The U.S. has a very different system, and so it's kind of comparing apples to oranges. People, I believe that in the entire time that we have been resettling refugees, there have been 3 arrests in this country, and I believe 2 of them were not even terrorist related. So, of course, it's possible that anyone could sneak in, but as you know, somebody said to me, a terrorist can sneak in way more easily than going through a 2+ year security clearance process with Homeland Security.
Tell me a little bit about the families that you have resettled. What has their response been, and what's their story?
Everybody's story is a little bit different, and everybody's story is a lot the same. We are dealing with people who have been persecuted in their country of origin and who are escaping persecution, including Syrians who are running away from the exact same things that we're all fearful of. And their stories are that of trauma, severe trauma. Many have witnessed murders of family members in front of them. They have watched their homes being destroyed. They've watched their businesses being destroyed, their careers being taken away from them. And they have really feared for their lives. And so they have been declared refugees. In 1951, the UN had a resolution that defined a refugee. And these people are cleared in the refugee camps for refugee status. So they often arrive exhausted, beyond exhausted from a terribly long journey and a very challenging time for their families and for their children. A lot of them come with a myriad of health issues. Many of them come having lost members of their family, so it is not unusual to see a mom with just her children or a dad with his children. So some families are very often have suffered severe trauma within their own internal system. They are grateful to be here. They feel that they're finally safe, and they are very hopeful about making a new life. And there are some that still wait to go back to their country of origin when there's peace again, and that's their dream, to go back home.
Maxine, thank you so much for joining us. This is a very interesting topic and so many different facets of this conversation, but we really appreciate you bringing that personal story as well. Thank you.
Thank you.